go. You guys can see all of your things, but I'm going to go back into this. And I'm first just going to start off with the AP exam info that we found out from the press conference last night. And so with that, there's a few things that I want to pass along. They haven't typed this up formally yet to give out to all of you, but kind of a lot of things that I was curious about, they cleared up. So first of all, they know that you're going to try to cheat. They're not like naive. I'm getting some teachers that are very naive, thinking like, man, I assigned this assignment out and I did this like lockdown browser and everyone got 100%. It's like, yeah, they also have every single thing at their disposal, internet, and you're asking really, really basic knowledge-based questions. If you can Google it, it shouldn't be on the test anyway. So they know that, and the questions that they're specifically going to ask in every subject area. This is like English, AP English, AP Lit, AP Stats, AP everything. No matter what the topic is, they're only going to be asking questions that you can't get points for just knowing content. So there's some rubrics depending on the subject area where if you could Google that information, it would be a huge advantage. Like let's say it's a US history exam and you just had to know like certain events that happened, or you could like research them really quickly. They don't ask that. And so they're not going to, there are questions like that every year, but that's when it's a testing environment that you can't access resources. So for that purpose, they're not going to ask any questions that are able to be Googled. And that's also with like if you're in any language, AP Spanish, AP French, AP Chinese, AP German, they got a whole bunch. They're not going to have any like writing and reading tasks. It's all going to be speaking tasks. And so they've thought through this a little bit, that they're not going to worry about like students that are going to be Googling stuff. So pretty much what they said is go ahead and have open notes. It's open notes. It's not, they don't care if you have notes open. You could have textbooks open. I thought at first when they were talking about this, they were talking about using software to track eye movement and things like that so that you can't be looking at two screens. But I don't think they're going to open that can of worms. It's just too much to, it's too much to manage and too much to figure out, or, to keep track of. And so they just said, go ahead and use resources. But keep in mind, you only have a limited amount of time to get to an answer and get that typed in. So you still really got to know what you're doing and not be trying to look up stuff. You should be just using all that time to write and answer the question. There's not going to be a lot of excess time of like, I'm going to go into a Reddit forum and see if anyone else is posting about this question right now and see if I can copy that. I'm kind of jumping down to like the cheating thing that they've implemented, and there are several things that they're doing for tracking answers that match other people's answers. They have some software for that. They are having a team scour popular chat rooms, stuff like that. And so just they preface this with like the penalties for cheating far outweigh that little bit of content information you might be able to pick up from it. What they said they'll do is anyone that's caught cheating, they are going to send out academic reports to every single institution that they apply to college, every single place that your ACT and SAT scores go out to, indicating that that you were cheating on an AP level exam, which is pretty much not going to let you into any major college and institution. So it is very serious penalties that they have for this environment. And so I know some people that's part of the game, is they want to try to figure out how can I get around these things in place, and it's honestly not worth it. You're not going to be able to do any better by looking up this kind of stuff. It's you know it, and then you write it out, and that's it. Along with that, as far as like format goes, you can either do it on a computer or a mobile device. And so if it's on a mobile device, you take a picture of your work, like you'd read through the prompt on your phone. So you'd be like reading through the prompt, and then you would take a picture of the work that you just wrote out and then click submit. And so like you'd have 20 minutes, there's 20-minute questions, and then 5 minutes of submit time. So like, anyway, you get 5 minutes to submit your answer. So 20 minutes to kind of work it out on paper, and then you turn it in for this 5-minute period. Now, if it's on a phone, you just send them that picture of your work in that 5 minutes, and that enters in your work, and that's it. And then if you use a mobile, or sorry, if you use your laptop, then you just be typing it in. So it could depend on the subject area. What it might make more sense for you to use a computer, or it might make more sense for you to use a mobile device. So we're kind of leaving that up to you. Some questions coming in. So what counts as cheating? Is Google and Notes not cheating for this test? No, Notes and Google are not cheating for this test, because the questions that they're asking cannot be, you can't really get anything more out of it than Google and Notes. So I would not have any other things going on in your browser, but definitely have your notes and textbooks open if you think it's going to help you. So yeah, notes out. Even a different monitor screen to look at technically doesn't count as cheating, but using other students' work, or even if they judge that like your work is not, like there's things that they can tell if it's like a response that is, I don't know, at a level that a high school student would not typically represent, then they would maybe flag that. But then they follow up just to check if they do have a question. They'd follow up. This year, they're going to actually send out the test to all the teachers, and they've never been able to do this before, but we each get a copy of your exams. So we get to see what you wrote. We get to see how they scored it. If there's any like question of validity, like, hey, that student probably didn't write this statement, they use the teachers in order to back that up. And I know your work. I know, how you guys have been doing. You can even tell like handwriting, stuff like that. So they're kind of doing it in two parts, using the teachers to do that, as well as all their software. And they're not indicating all the software that they have available to them to catch for cheating. They're just reminding students that it is far more penalty to cheat than to just answer the questions and type it in. So to make sure that you don't find yourself in that boat. So Zev is asking, like, if they allow notes from textbooks, won't answers be the same? That's kind of the point, Zev. None of the questions are going to be relating to content. Like you're not going to just be describing how a concept works, if that makes sense. Like you're going to be evaluating a situation, a lab-based thing that you have to develop an equation for. Like there's going to be no way to look that up in a textbook or or Google. Like there's not going to be any way to discover that as an answer. So yeah, they're really not worried about similar answers coming in from those sources, because what they're going to be asking you is a much higher level question than just like, what is torque? And so definition type of stuff won't be there. Portia, yeah, working with other people is not allowed. They would definitely flag that. You cannot have anyone else proctor, or let's say proxy the exam. So let's say someone else takes your test. You have to be by yourself in a lockdown environment, taking the test by yourself. And so, yeah, any indication that there was cheating going on, like talking back and forth, your test would be negated, and every single university and college would be aware of that as part of your admission, and then cancel admission because of academic dishonesty. So yeah, you don't work with other people. You're by yourself. You can have notes open, textbooks open if you want. I honestly don't think that they're going to matter. I know that seems weird, because all the tests in your life, that would make the difference, right? If you had your textbook open and all your notes open, you could do really well. AP tests aren't like that. And you'll see as we start working through more questions, go ahead and have all your stuff out. It's not really going to help as far as like solving out those problems. You're going to have a plan and get to an answer within that 20 minutes. There's not going to be the time to confer with other people and think how they did it. And I mean, they're going to be trying to work it out and solve it at the same time. And so you imagine that trying to like, you're texting someone else taking the test at the same time. I would just, again, how they can account for that, I'm not sure. They've just said any instance of cheating, there's huge penalties for it. So it is weighted the same. I'm getting like questions about, is it the same as other tests? Colleges are accepting this for credit. It's not like reduced, and you're not going to have like trouble with some colleges like, oh, you took it during the 2020 year. We're not going to take that. It's because of how much work they're putting in to make this a fair test. They're still doing that. So yeah, scoring's all the same. And then, the question is how well you do. No, the scoring is based on a predetermined rubric of what it would take to get a passing score. So they, with the questions in mind, for at least for physics, they already have in mind what it takes to get a 3. So they don't scale it off of how people do. They say, in order to earn credit, someone has to show this much proficiency on this test. So you have to at least get this many right in order to get a 3. And it doesn't matter if no one hits that mark that year or everyone hits that mark that year. It's still the same benchmark. So they decide ahead of time. There's a committee of college professors, AP test writers, AP teachers that all agree upon what it would take to earn college credit for that year's exam. And I'm sure that they're doing that right now with the new questions that are going to be asked for this year. Yes. Okay. So let me keep going into like the format here. We're getting questions on just like, how is this going to look? So the format is you can either take it on computer or a mobile device, and there are 2 questions. So 2 questions only, and this is for every subject area. There's one that will be a 20-minute question and one that will be a 15-minute question. So, and then each of those has 5 minutes to submit your answer. So a 20-minute question and a 15-minute question, meaning it's either going to only involve 2 topics. So 2 of the, let's see, for us, 7 topics, or it could be 2 questions that draw on multiple concepts within them. So that's a possibility. But yeah, 2 questions, one 20-minute, one 15-minute. They're going to release like a cheat sheet of these pretty soon. Benson's giving me crap about charging my iPad. Yes, I'm keeping it more charged now that I could just permanently charge on the wall. But yeah, they're going to be giving what was I talking about? 2 questions for each exam, and the questions are at a higher level than just content-based questions that you could look up in a textbook. So the guy flat out said they encourage you to have your notes out, open notes, open book. But that doesn't mean open people, like you're not using other people to take your test. Really, the point is like, you want to show that you're ready to go into the next college level class. And so if you test out of a class and it's not actually what you represent for yourself, then you weren't ready to move on to that next class, and you're going to have even more trouble because you just skipped over the intro college level course. So they want to make sure that you're placed in the right setting. Zev, as far as like how many different versions, I don't know. I think there are going to be multiple. Every year they have multiple versions, and so I don't think it'd be any different. I think it'd be especially true for this year. I'm sorry. The questions will probably not be the same for everyone. They probably will have a couple different sets of questions that are going around nationwide, because that's typically what they do, even for the real AP exam. Like some people got a question on this for the free response, and a whole nother group didn't get it. So I don't know that. I don't think they're going to release that information. But anyway, Let's keep going then. Let's talk about the dates and results and all this stuff. And so the dates, it looks like it's going to be from May. They indicated just like this week or 2 week period. And I don't have these exactly down, but it's like May 11th through like the next week. And there's going to be different times for each class. And so like the AP Physics 1 test will be at a certain time on a Thursday or something like that. And so what you need to do is basically make sure that you have all of your stuff ready in a quiet location away from distractions. There shouldn't be anyone in the background. If you're, they're assuming that you're going to take the steps to get yourself to a secure location. So there can't be people standing behind you, standing over your shoulder. That would be indicated as cheating. And so they'll have guidelines for you and practice for you so that you really know what to do to set up. But that's it's around that May 11th period, and I'll send out the exact form once they type that up. I'll get to the final in a little bit, Morgan. Let me finish this, and then we'll get to that. So the dates, again, you take it during that time unless you have some really, really serious circumstance that doesn't allow you to take it. At first, they said they think they were going to do like 2 different dates, like one early and one late, and you got to choose, and they're not doing that anymore. Instead, it's you take it at that time, and if you need to apply for the later testing, there has to be a valid reason. So like death in the family, your power went out, your little brother had to go to the hospital and you had to, like, there has to be a major reason for why you missed that first test. And so that's what's coming up. So then there's like an alternate testing date, which is, they always do this, a later testing date in early June, where if you happen to miss that first session for whatever reason, you have to talk to Mrs. Hatch and apply to have it overridden to get to the later testing date. But most students tend to do better on the earlier testing date because it is not, it's fresh in your head. So, okay. So Lucas is asking, will you continue to send stuff past that, past May 13th? Yeah, we'll keep trying to help you guys out for the AP exam. I'll probably stick to, maybe lowering it down to just those who are taking the AP exam and just sending it out to them. But yeah, I'll keep in communication with you. But it's kind of like we're ending school that same week that you'd be taking the AP exam. So there shouldn't be too much time where I'm having to like send stuff back and forth with you after that. All right. We talked a lot about cheating. Basically, the penalties are so great for that this year that I just would not get yourself into any trouble with that. Don't talk to other people during the exam. Don't have anyone else in the room during the exam. And don't text or call people while you're taking the exam. All of that could be held against you and then prevent you from getting into a college or university, which would be really a dumb chance just to try a test. And so again, keep in mind, overall, I think so big takeaways from that. I know I talked about a lot of scary stuff with that, but like this will probably be like one of the easiest AP exams that we've ever had. I really think that anyone who signed up should be taking this exam. This is like one of your best shots at like getting a perfect score, a 5, a 4 on the 8. Like that was unheard of before. But now you think about what you have. You have 5 weeks to get yourself ready. That is unprecedented. We've never had that much time to get ourselves ready for the AP exam. And so that is huge as far as getting yourself ready and then scoring better. Typically what happens is the end of the year, you get caught up with so much other stuff going on at school. You got spring sports, you got DECA, show choir. There's all these things that are going to prevent you from, focusing that hard on academics, which rightfully so. Those things being fun and taking a lot of your time are going to be drawing away from academics. But the point is like now you have all this time to just get ready. And so you could score really, really well this year. And I think like this is a good chance for a lot of people to like get the 5 or 4 that they, are wanting for an AP exam. It was really tough to do that before with the multiple choice and 5 different free responses that you had to score really well on. And now we just got to study pretty hard in the next few weeks, and we can do really well on 2 questions. I think we can do that. Also, if you're dual enrolled, there's really no reason you should not take the test. And so they pay for it. So if you dual enrolled, they paid for it already. It's kind of a freebie. You just take the test and see how it goes. There's no penalty. The other thing that people are worried about, I think, like I got a couple of students that were asking, like, I think I'm going to drop the test because I'm just scared I'm going to do bad. Don't send it to anyone. No one cares how you do on an AP exam. Literally no one. Like teachers don't see it. Administration doesn't see it. It's between you and like whoever you want to send it to. So colleges don't see your AP scores unless you want them to. And I think this is a big misconception that a lot of students, their first time taking an AP class have want them to. Let me finish that idea. Colleges don't see your AP scores unless you want them to. If you get a 1, don't send it to anyone. Okay. No one cares. I don't see it. I don't care about it. They don't care about it. Like, I think people have this misconception that like, oh, they're going to look back and see that I got these bad grades on the AP exam, and then they're going to take a scholarship away from me, or they're going to not let me do this or XYZ. No one cares. And so you take it, you do as good as you can. You got a really good shot at scoring high on this one because it's so much reduced from other years. I think everyone could do really, really well on this. So that's just my 2 cents. Nope, Morgan, they're not looking into that. So if they see you took an AP class, they're not wondering, well, why didn't you send us the score? That's totally a separate idea. That's a different topic. So they don't, they're not worried that you didn't send them a score and you took an AP class. So it absolutely has nothing to do with how you do. They're not going to look at that. We have backup from college counselors, all the recruiting offices from major universities across the country that say that they don't do that. That's not a thing that they're interested in nickel and diming people like, well, hold on, you took AP Gov and you never sent us a score for AP Gov, so you must have done bad. That's just, I don't know, that they're not in that game. They're just, if you want the credit, you send them the test, and that's what they're doing. They're just only taking those credits if you apply for them. So they're not using it as an entrance requirement. All right. Let's talk about the final then, and then we'll move on to this, how we're going to do this. So basically, giving a final is, in my opinion, absolutely ridiculous. You can't test you guys under these circumstances other than if you had the ability to have like an AP level exam like they're doing. So I've decided a couple things. If you are taking the AP exam, so if taking AP exam and you score well, meaning a 3, 4, or 5 on it, I will bump your grade up. So if you score well on the AP exam, let's say you're at a C and you got a 4 or 5 on this AP exam, you got an A for the year. That's when you show that you have that much level of mastery, your grade should ultimately reflect that. And that's typically what I would do on the final, that like if you were failing all year, but then you ace the final, which is very rare, but it could happen. Then I reward those people and they can bring their grade back up that way. If you do poorly, I'm not going to go back and downgrade you. This is only a help. And so this is only to improve your grade from what it currently is. So if you, let's say you're at an A though, and you get a 4 or 5, I'll bump it up to an A+. That shows that you still scored that much higher on the AP exam, and you get a bump for that. For everyone though, the way we're going to do the final is more of a reflection style. So I don't have this exactly laid out of what we're going to do, but you're going to look back at each unit, okay, each topic. And there's kind of a combination. I have a review bundle of like the progress check worksheets, well, the ones that we would get in our little topics binders. And I'm either thinking about doing some combination of completing those as a kind of a objective piece, and then more of a just self-reflection on which topics gave you the most trouble, which were the biggest misconceptions in each topic that you had. And so you're really just looking back and identifying misconceptions that you had in each unit, and then maybe major takeaways from that unit, like what did you discover since those misconceptions? And so in order to do that, I'm kind of thinking of either a combination of maybe you do it through a video, just a chat back and forth like this, like where you can just talk through and say like, hey, what did you think? What have you gotten out of this class as we've started? What things did you struggle with? What were some misconceptions? And then, or we could do it through like more like a paper, like an essay where you just type up your reflection and send it in that way. I haven't decided all that yet. So I will give you more info like after break. So I'm going to use spring break to kind of formalize all this stuff, because this is all new. We're making this up literally as we go, and I want to make sure that it's fair. That's my biggest concern in all this, is like teachers giving out things that aren't fair assessments of students, that don't reflect equity at home and how you're able to do this stuff. And so I got to make sure that whatever we do decide, it can't just be like, oh, only a certain population of students actually has the ability to do this, to earn the grade. And so we want to make sure that you guys all have a fair way of showing what you know, and that's what we'll do to end the year. And it should be very relaxed. Like I'm assuming as long as you do it, pretty much everyone's going to be getting 100%, because it's just you talking through what you know. There's not going to be any performance piece to it, like, okay, now that you reflected, I want you to solve this problem right now in front of me. And we're just not going to do that. It's a weird end of the year. We don't have a final in that way. And so this reflection will serve as kind of our final assessment grade. And hopefully we'll all do extremely well on it. I don't know how that grade is going to get calculated in at the end. I have to go back. We can't do everything traditionally how we set up. So I've had a few students who are like, well, wait, isn't the final 15%? Well, it was when we actually had a real structure of the fourth quarter and semester final. Things are different now. And so we have to adjust that and change it. We can't just make it fit into what it used to be. That's not how science works. You got to adapt your model as new information is given. So that's kind of the end of the year. I will give you more on that as I develop it this spring break. And if you got questions on that kind of stuff and concerns, definitely reach out and we can help you out there. All right, so I'm going to end this live stream with this question, and it's going to be pretty short. But I gave you this question of a arrow that was going to blast through a pumpkin, and we had to decide which of these options, embedding in the pumpkin, passing straight through the pumpkin, or bouncing out of the pumpkin, or bouncing off the pumpkin, would result in the largest angle change. And so you had to rank them first, and then you had to give a paragraph explaining why. So I'm just going to move this stuff down, and we'll go back to this. The first thing that we got to establish is that whatever angle this makes, okay, if you got this pumpkin that's deflecting at some angle theta, whatever this angle makes, it's all going to be based on how much momentum is transferred to the pumpkin by that arrow. So the more momentum, kind of the big idea, the more momentum the pumpkin gets from the arrow, the larger the angle. So that's kind of just step one, larger the angle theta. Oh, yeah, look, it says AP2. I'm just using the same notes, so good catch there. I'll change it It's your AP1 problem. It's just I'm reusing. I just did one with them last mod, so I just switched it. Well, anyway, that pumpkin's angle deflection is going to be related to how much momentum it has. And the more momentum the arrow gives that pumpkin, then the bigger the angle. So let's just kind of talk about each one. If the arrow passes straight through, okay, let me just draw this out down here. I got a pumpkin. Might as well give it a nice colored stem. And I draw this arrow, and I'm going to animate this here. So if I have this arrow coming in and it passes straight through, some of that momentum is going to transfer to the pumpkin, but now on the other side, it's going much slower. And so the arrow still traveling to the right, with the velocity v after to the right, let's say it equals like 6 meters per second. Well, the arrow beforehand must have been going like 20 meters per second. So it's going fast to begin with, and then it's going slower after. If that arrow changed momentum, the pumpkin had to change momentum. That's what it interacted with. So the pumpkin is going to be moving forward, and we don't have an exact velocity, but we're just doing this conceptually. So that's how it's going to move. That's how it's going to swing angle. We imagine the difference of the arrow passing through and the arrow just coming to a dead stop. Okay, so now we got this arrow that's just coming to a dead stop, and the final velocity is now 0. Whoops. That, delete. So now the arrow's stopped all of its momentum. And so now you think, well, where did its momentum go? Well, that all had to go in the pumpkin. Therefore, we know that the arrow going through is going to transfer less momentum to the pumpkin than the arrow that sticks or embeds. And so we know that embedding is going to cause a bigger change in angle than just than just passing straight through. Well, then what about bouncing? Because after you bounce, you're still traveling with speed. Well, bouncing is the biggest change in momentum. If you're going this way at a certain velocity and then you bounce back, no matter which velocity it is, like let's say velocity equals 6 meters per second that way, that is a larger change. Okay, your change in momentum would be -6 minus 20, which would equal a -26 kilogram meters per second. Whereas in the first one, we're going to assume this has a 1 kilogram arrow just to make the math easy. So in the first one, it would have been, this is delta P of bouncing. Delta P of sticking would have been 0 minus 20, which would just give you -20 kilogram meters per second. So the change in momentum is larger for the bounce, meaning you're going to transfer more momentum to the pumpkin. So as far as ranking these things go, bouncing would be the largest, then embedding, and then passing straight through. And you're ranking from greatest to least using 1 for the greatest angle, and that's why bouncing would get a 1. In the paragraph, then you're supposed to justify it. Let me show you the rubric for how that was broken down. How are we doing in the chat log? Nope, that's not chat log. Pretty good. Okay. Where am I going? I need to go to Safari and then AP Classroom. All right, so this is the grading rubric for your response question. You get 1 point for just talking about the conservation of momentum, the fact that that's what's dictating all this. You get another point for correctly stating or implying in all 3 cases that the magnitude of the change is what affects the angle. You get a point for explaining that the arrow, that the bounce arrow must transfer the most momentum. You get a point for stating that the passed arrow ends up faster than the embedded arrow or does not transfer as much momentum to the pumpkin. So we kind of talked through all those ideas. For indicating, regardless of conclusion, that the arrow that slowed more during the collision transfers more. Okay, so kind of by stating all of these things you end up talking about. And then the last one, there's a 1 point earned for logical, clear, coherent paragraph. So basically that you wrote in complete sentences and then you had a structure to it that was logical. So that is the what do you call it? Oh, sorry, I'm just reading through questions here. So we got a couple of people asking if it can be used with energy instead, and if it's, is it moving when it's embedded? Okay, let's just go through those ideas. Back to notability. Okay, so the question is what if it sticks? Okay, it embeds. Yeah, the arrow could still be moving. So let me just kind of give you an example here. My cell phone is the pumpkin, and here comes the arrow. So the arrow on its way in, if it sticks, it's still going to move with it. Okay, and that's fine. I said it. I just imagine it to be 0, but the concept is that it's no longer moving relative. So that change is even smaller, right? Then that change in momentum is smaller than bouncing off. So bouncing off is going to have the largest change. Sticking, even if you're moving with it, is going to be the next smallest. And then the absolute smallest is passing straight through, because that is the least slowdown for the arrow going through. So I try to use 0 as like a velocity, and that might be what I think is confusing, that first question. And then Muhammad's asking if we could use energy instead of momentum. You can use energy, but it's kind of tough with this because you're talking about inelastic and elastic collisions. And remember, kinetic energy is not conserved in inelastic collisions. So you'd have to know more about like thermal temperature buildups and things as the arrow passed through. And so energy conservation is not going to be a good method. Remember, conservation of momentum always works. So let me just kind of write out some stuff here. So conservation of momentum always works. And then conservation of kinetic energy only works with perfect elastic collisions. And so the fact that this wasn't perfectly elastic, we wouldn't be able to look at like a conservation of kinetic energy. So really your go-to is conservation of momentum in order to explain that. And I think that's it. That's all we're going to do. If you have individual questions that are keeping the live stream going, if you have individual questions on the homework assignments from the previous days, please just send me a chat and follow up. And then we can go through either one-on-one meeting or just go over Google Chat. Have a great spring break, and I'll give you more information about all this AP testing as they start to print up materials today. They had a press conference last night, so they just said all this stuff, and I tried to get as much of it as I could down. But now they're on their website. They should be like typing this up and like putting it out there. So I'll send that out to you. That's it for over the break. I'm not going to assign extra homework. I want people to relax and just have a good spring break. And I will try to do the same. And then we'll tackle getting ready for the AP exam and this reflection piece to finish out the year after spring break. So have a great Friday and happy spring break. Bye-bye.